The holiday travel period well behind us, but it doesn't mean that we stop driving altogether, of course. Pump prices right now about $3.16 a gallon in the Syracuse area. That's about a dime less than it was this time last year.
But how high will we go? How low will we go this year? Let's ask an expert. Gas Buddies Patrick De Haan. Hey, Patrick, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Let's start here. Central New York, how are we looking, say, next few weeks out, roughly? Where are we kind of in this, I guess, winter cycle with prices?
Yeah, well, typically this is the non-eventful time of year, although I will say in the last couple of weeks, oil prices have jumped up a bit. Some of that had to do with the Biden administration slapping more stringent sanctions on countries like Iran and Russia. And of course, now we have President Trump taking over. So there could be a little bit of a tumultuous next couple of weeks. Of course, there has been the discussion of tariffs on products like crude oil and other things from Canada and Mexico. That could really shake up the future. President Trump punting for another 10 days or so on whether he will or not sign those tariffs into law. That could be really problematic, especially amidst this extremely cold weather, and especially for New York and the northeastern states, because a lot of your products like diesel, heating oil, and gasoline comes from refineries in Canada. So this could be something we'll have to watch. Traditionally, gas prices start their seasonal rise in about mid to late February. That's a trend that probably will stay pretty consistent through March or April. Gas prices could peak just under the $4 a gallon mark in Syracuse.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. Lots to look ahead to. We look ahead to 2025. So what's your prediction for this year's average, and how does that compare to last year?
Yeah, overall, it's going to feel like a very similar year. We're predicting the yearly national average this year to be about $3.22 a gallon. Last year, the equivalent was $3.33. Now, of course, you're in New York. Prices do tend to be a little bit above the national average, but I think the trends will remain consistent. Prices will be slightly lower this year than last year. Of course, there's a lot of unpredictable things that can happen, things President Trump could sign that could have various impacts on prices. So we'll keep an eye on that. But generally, a slight improvement at the pump this year compared to what we saw last year. But President Trump had talked about cutting energy prices in half. That looks a little bit too promising, something that we don't expect to happen.
Well, let's talk a little more specifically. I think you said probably late February is when we start to see those prices start to creep up. When do we see the highest? When do we see the lowest prices typically in a year?
Well, typically, this is amongst the lowest times of year, January and February. We do start the spring surge in price. That happens no matter who's in the White House, I might add. And that's something that usually lasts until April or May. That's when prices usually plateau. Between now and May, we could see prices rising 25 to 75 cents. That's because the changeover to cleaner summer gasoline starts already. Refineries start maintenance and demand starts going up. But usually the high is not in the summer, but shortly ahead of the summer. If it's smooth sailing, gas prices do tend to decline throughout the summer months, the biggest question, hurricane season. And by the end of 2025, we could see prices very close to where they are now, or potentially even lower.
And Patrick, is there anything that you're watching that could unexpectedly hike gas prices?
Well, certainly that February 1st date for tariffs, that could really change things up, especially when you talk about if the tariffs last for a period of time. We're also watching OPEC. OPEC had previously expected to restore some of their oil production by April or so. If they kick the can down the road, it's possible that gas prices may be a little bit higher this year. Other than that, there could be a turn in some of the legislation that could be on President Trump's desk. Things like easing the EPA air regulations play a big role in gas prices. So aside from that, the political uncertainty could drive gas prices.
All right, I'm going to sneak one more in for you, Patrick, here. We know the president has said, some of his supporters, drill, baby, drill. How are we going to do as far as drilling for more oil? Can you even do that from the White House?
Well, he can make it easier for oil companies to go out and look to drill, but what he can't do is mandate the companies do just that. And so oil companies are going to respond more to environmental, or I should say economic conditions. Oil prices being higher will cause natural incentive for oil companies to drill, baby, drill. But lower prices, as President Trump had promised, is probably going to backfire with oil companies not drilling more when prices are lower. Imagine if your boss said, will you work at half the pay, the same amount? You'd probably say no. Oil companies are right in that same territory. They're probably not going to produce more at a lower price.
Right. Makes sense. Patrick De Haan, thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate your
Thanks for
time and
having
your
me.
expertise.
Thanks, Patrick.
Goodbye.